Hey everybody, Some Gadget Guy here, and today we're going to take a look at the Lumia 435 Dual SIM Edition, uber entry-level phone, this uber budget phone from Microsoft, the Microsoft Lumia team. And I'm starting to sound like a broken record player, but it really is incredible what this former Nokia hardware team is able to do at lower and lower and lower and lower price points. Jumping into a quick size comparison, here is the 435 next to my venerable Lumia 920, and just a quick look at how chunky this new entry-level phone is. Here's the 435 next to my Lumia icon, and we'll talk about design more in a bit, but you can definitely see the inspiration as we've moved from these sort of rounded corners. The Lumia 830 had slightly pointier corners, and the 435 is definitely following in that tradition. And I've given the icon a little grief for being kind of a chunky butt flagship phone, but you can see the 435 is even just a bit thicker. And for those of you who might not speak Lumia, here is the 435 next to a Galaxy S5, just so you can kind of see a size comparison with probably a more recognizable phone. And again, checking out that round rump on the profile. Walking around the hardware, we start off with the 4-inch diagonal screen. It has a resolution of 480 by 800, that's WVGA. It's actually not a bad pixel pitch for this size screen, though I gotta say colors wash out pretty quickly and the viewing angles aren't terrific. But when viewed dead on, it's a respectable viewing experience. Now I find this kind of interesting that on the bottom of the 435, we return to capacitive keys, as opposed to some of the other budget phones that we played with, like the Lumia 635, which use on-screen software buttons for your back, your home key, and your Cortana search button. On the bottom of the phone, we've got the micro USB port for charging the phone. You can also plug it into a computer to move files back and forth. On the top of the phone, we've got a 3.5mm headset jack. We'll talk about the audio quality on this headset jack in just a bit. On the left side of the phone, we got nada. On the right side of the phone, we've got the power button, the volume rocker. We do not have a dedicated camera button, just like the 635. That's all gonna be done through software. And on the back of the phone, we've got the 2-megapixel shooter without a flash. We've got the Microsoft logo here, nicely sort of built into this polycarb casing, and the speaker vent here down at the bottom. Now with the internals exposed, here's the 1500 milliamp hour battery that was giving me solid day to day and a half runtime. It's very low power CPU. It's a dual core Qualcomm 200, a low resolution screen, and the backlight isn't very bright, so there's not a lot to strain this little power pack. If we pop this out though, we can see the dual SIM cards. This is something that's not very common here in the United States, and I actually kind of had to look up what the dealio was on having dual SIM cards. I've already actually removed my SIM cards because this unit has to go back to the Microsoft Lumia team today. I've got to get it back out in the mail. But especially for people who might be doing a little traveling, or if you have to have a business line and a personal line, it's nice to be able to pop in 2 SIM cards and have access to all of that information. If you store your contacts on your SIM cards, then you'll have all of that stored locally on the phone. And then over here on the side, we've got a micro SD card slot capable of reading up to a 128 gigabyte micro SD card. And I would definitely recommend investing in some kind of memory card because the unit only comes with 8 gigabytes of storage built in, and the user's really only going to get access to around 5 gigabytes of storage. And I continue to be a fan of the work the Lumia team is doing in bringing these type of colorful polycarb foam bodies to market. Plus the matte finish on this has a nice sort of almost satiny texture to it. It's easy to hold on to. You don't have to worry about sweaty hands, slipping, dropping it. It doesn't have the wet bar of soap problem that some glossy backed phones or aluminum built phones can have. And when we pop in 2 SIM cards, you can see I've got 2 cell phone connections showing in my little notification tray up there. Expanding our action center, you can see exactly what those connections are. One of these is a little prepaid SIM card that I don't use very often, and it's just showing that I'm only on Edge. But then the other one is my actual personal SIM card, which is showing a G, which I assume means that we're getting some kind of 3G style data connection. Now take this with a grain of salt because I don't have a lot of experience with dual SIM card handsets, but it seems that Windows Phone does a reasonably good job of dividing what information is coming in from which SIM card. So my SIM card 1, not used very often. I don't have a lot actually coming to the phone right now, but SIM card 2 showing a bunch of text messages that I've gotten from my buddy Cameron, and tapping on one of those messages, I can go directly to replying to that text message, and it's going to be sent from the phone number associated with that SIM card. And going into our Network Plus settings menu, this is where we can actually control the experience of managing multiple SIM cards on this phone. And if I hit set on this smart dual SIM setting, this is where I can customize the experience and make one of these the primary SIM card. So when one of these SIM cards is unavailable, it will automatically transfer or forward that call to the other SIM card to make sure I don't miss any information. Do things like select phone number, initiate call waiting, call forwarding, how I want all of these settings to work between the 2 different phone numbers associated with this phone. Unfortunately, some of the benefits that you might find on a dual SIM card setup, things like managing contacts on different SIM cards, I don't really have a way to show you or to take advantage of those because I typically typically use web services for all of my contact management now. Things like when you go into your People's Hub and how all of the contacts on your SIM cards are going to be collected in that one repository. I can't show you that because I don't save that kind of stuff on my SIM cards. Now, the performance of lower cost Lumia gear, especially at these entry-level price points, has always been second to none, especially when compared to Android devices that can often cost up to twice as much as their Windows Phone counterparts. We're often treated to a very smooth UI, especially in making it through menus and app lists, being able to pull down a notification tray and get into settings. Overall, it's really pleasant performance even with this super low power chipset. Now, obviously, where you're going to see performance start to suffer is when we start playing with things like games. Yeah, this chipset is not a graphics monster, so let's get into a race. And actually, let's just show you how long it's going to take to load a race. But I'm gonna do this very first race. Let's hit next, let's hit next. Some of these transitions are actually pretty smooth still, considering it's gonna load up the game. It's gonna take a little while to get there. I'll zoom in a little bit while it's loading. It's gonna be kind of hard to play while still showing you on camera, especially since the viewing angles aren't terrific. It's getting a little stuttery doing some of these panning and transitions. 3, 2, 1. All right, let's race. So we're not getting the smoothest frame rate here, but the game is still playable. I mean, I don't have any crazy lag that would prevent me from actually completing a race or a course here. Just took out that car there. Let's try a little turbo boost. So we're not getting all of the same particle effects that we would normally get on higher end hardware, especially with like Qualcomm 800 chipsets. But I'm still getting sparks and scrapes and debris, so it's actually not terrible. Getting into another example, here we've got Halo Spartan Assault. You can see how long it takes to load up. Oh, actually, that's pretty quick. But the screen is so small that my thumbs are doing a pretty good job, my super fat thumbs, are doing a pretty good job of blocking parts of the screen, and it's kind of hard to accurately control just because every little twitch that you do on these dual analog stick style controls, it's a radical change in where your character is pointing. I'm sure with a little practice, or if you're giving this phone to a kid, maybe a kid with smaller fingers, this game would still be playable, but you can see it's not the smoothest experience, and it is a little tricky to control. But of course, I would say a device like this is not really intended to be any kind of game-playing monster. Although I've got to say, I'm pleasantly surprised by how good the performance is, considering all the things that I've said already about this phone being kind of super cheap. Now, where this experience kind of falls apart a little bit is when I start firing up high-resolution video. So for my speaker tests, for example, I use a Blu-ray quality rip of the film Night of the Living Dead to do my speaker tests. So here it's trying to play a pretty high data rate video, and it's just not really up to the task. Now, what's funny is that the audio actually plays rather well, but the video is just a garbled slideshow of the film. It's not even really keeping up with the audio on this. It's just not a very good experience. And this is running a version of Denim. We do not have the newer Lumia camera app. So when we come into Lumia camera, what we're going to see is the older sort of Nokia style camera classic app. You can see the 3 different icons right there for video, photo, and then this burst shot mode. And when we come in, this thing also does not have any kind of dedicated autofocus or manual focus. So I wasn't even really able to complete a proper camera test the way that I do other camera tests for higher end phones. And for the 2 megapixel shooter on the back of this phone, we're not talking about any kind of content creation device. It's really a there if you need it kind of setup, which I think it can only achieve VGA video. So we don't even get 720p video out of this 2 megapixel sensor with the Qualcomm 200 series chipset. But what we do get from the Denim update, we do have full access to Cortana. And we can do location-based reminders, we can do people-based reminders, and then we have Cortana's notebook. You can go in there and customize all of your specific interests, and Cortana will do a really good job of feeding you information. Plus, it's just always really cool when you've got something in your calendar and Cortana starts giving you traffic updates for when you should leave the house. And as a part of the Denim update, we do have access to folders, so you can organize like apps on your home screen. You can keep your live tiles all nice and tidy and organized there. Going through our settings, we still have the same options to customize the start screen if we want a dark background. I like that the color automatically matches the color of the phone's backplate. We can go through and throw in a background photo just like on any other Windows phone. We've got controls for ringtones and sounds, various email accounts, notifications and actions from this top notification tray. And oh man, just look how smooth that action is right there, especially compared to the first notification trays that dropped out, especially from the developer preview on more expensive phones. They've really cleaned up that action right there. I'm really happy to see it. We still have the apps corner. If you want to set up a streamlined guest account on your phone, you can do that too. We have the kids corner, which is very similar to the apps corner and letting kids play with various apps on your phone, but in a way that you don't have to worry about them sending all of your selfies out to your friends and family. Battery saver options, we've got data sense, we've got storage sense, really easy ways to just make sure that you're keeping track of the storage on your phone and then how much data you've used, especially if you're on a more expensive data plan. We've got the excellent driving mode service, and so when you're connected to certain Bluetooth devices, you can designate those so like the Bluetooth in my car, I can say that is my car audio Bluetooth solution, and whenever I connect to that, this phone automatically goes into a driving mode. We've got a full rundown on that in our Lumia 635 review. Now, while we don't have Glimpse, we do have a double tap to wake option. So if I turn this phone screen off, just let it kind of sit, there's the little tap sound there. I can double tap on the screen and it will wake it up. And lastly, I wanted to talk about audio because I was very surprised by the audio quality on the 3.5mm headset jack. It's not quite as full as a flagship phone's headphone jack output might be. But again, we've got a really nice setup here where even if we weren't using this as a phone, we've got a media player when paired with, say, a 32GB SD card that handily rivals any of the standalone music players that you can go out there and buy. Like, I'm still shocked that when you go out and buy something like an iPod Nano, we're still talking about a $130 to $150 dedicated MP3 player, where this thing as a phone becomes a pretty nice little multimedia solution for listening to music. And when we get into those audio settings, we still have access to the same full graphic EQ that we get on flagship phones. We've got all of these presets for specific types of audio that you might want to listen to. If you want a bass boost, if you want a vocal cut. So if I tap vocal cut, it's going to cut a chunk out of the middle EQ. I mean, it's really sophisticated stuff for a phone this cheap, and it actually does do a pretty good job of coloring the audio once you plug in a pair of headphones. Now, we don't have any of the Dolby certification on a device like this. It's just a little too low power, a little too inexpensive, but we do still have some stereo widening tricks. When you plug in your headphones, we do have a virtual surround sound. Again, it's sort of tricks that involve electronic reverb and then stereo widening to trick your ears into thinking that you're hearing something surrounding your head, but this phone can still tackle some of that type of usage. This phone just continues a really excellent track record with phones like the 520 that I got to play with, the Lumia 635, internationally the 535. This phone punches way above its weight, and it just becomes a really easy phone to recommend. Say you're traveling, you're going overseas, you can buy this phone locally, pop in some kind of prepaid SIM, and then also load maps internally. So like just with the Here Map service, you can use this as a little handy navigator and never really have to worry about how much data you're cutting into, while also keeping your SIM card from home in place to make sure you don't miss communication from family and friends. And when you're factoring the cost of that kind of international travel, this thing almost becomes disposable. And for those of you who need to shop a little savvier, you're a little more budget conscious, these entry-level Lumias are doing a phenomenal job of providing us the smartphone basics, our necessary email, text messaging, and social media communication, with performance that is not punishing just because you wanted to go with a less expensive phone. And as the flagship market is fairly well mature, this is the area where I think we're going to see a lot more companies starting to play in this space and offering up even better solutions for people that want mobile computing but don't want to have to break the bank to get it. And I'll of course leave some links down below this video where you can find more information on the Lumia 435, where you can shop this puppy online. As always, thanks so much for watching. Be sure to hit subscribe if you would like to catch more videos and reviews like these, and I would not be able to continue producing on this channel if you all weren't out there sharing my videos with your family, friends, and on social media. So keep bringing more cool people to the party. Hit that thumbs up button, and I will catch you all on the next review.